Good evening, and welcome to the Thursday, May 28th, 2026 Transportation Commission meeting. My name is Inumi Duno Bikoya, and I am the Transportation Commission Staff Liaison. This meeting is being recorded, so I ask that you please turn off your mics and Teams unless you are speaking. Before we start with the agenda items, we do have one speaker who signed up to speak on matters not on the agenda.
I can't hear anything. Is the audio on?
Doesn't show that I'm muted there. Is it there?
There you go. Great. See it. I hear it now. Thank you.
I apologize about that. Before we start with the agenda items, I'd like to turn it over to Susan Campbell, who has signed up to speak on behalf of Glen Carlin Civic Association. So I'll turn it over to you, Susan. You have 4 minutes.
We just had our SPRC meeting last Monday, and I have never been to one of those. I had no idea. Now we know how these things go. It seemed like to us, the idea of having all of our comments go to 1 minute instead of 2 minutes was really tough. Anyway, it was just so, I've come here 3 times now. Yes, I'm frustrated again. Our comments really weren't heard. We did send comments after the SPRC meeting. And I'm just going to focus on one thing that I've talked about repeatedly. It's the path. I'd like to bring it back to the online survey that we worked really hard to make sure a lot of the people in our neighborhood did. 35 people at least filled it out. I read every single comment. I can tell you, I tallied them all. Okay, for land use, 17 people cited their concerns for overflow parking and the light trespass that a path would create into Fifth Road, which is a cul-de-sac that abuts the park and also the property. For land form and architecture, 11 cited light trespass into the neighborhood that the path would create. 22 asked that the front of the behavioral health center be moved to Carlin Springs Road because of the second floor wall of glass and the light trespass. For transportation, 19 cited that the proposed bike path, and I call it a bike path now, would be used for parking and put stress on the neighborhood. And someone even said it. The woman, one of the women from DHS even said that would put stress if we eliminated one of the parking lots. So, and 22 said that the second entrance down on Carlin Springs Road would need a signal, and it would need to be turned right in order to work well. So, and for the landscaping part, 17 asked to eliminate the path. 12 asked that the tree canopy and the light be considered because we found out on Monday night that there can't be any trees because of the security risks. And that was shushed. It was shushed. And there is no part in this discussion whatsoever about safety and security. There's no part of this SBRC process that talks about that. So, you know, a big part of that path issue is the light. There is a giant wall of glass in the front of the building. So yes, I'm frustrated. I saw no evidence that the members would be interested in what we had to say. And they all, in fact, every single planning commission member passed on whether or not they wanted the path to be part of the plan. So what we've asked, what we're writing a letter this week, is that the whole idea of the path be pushed back in the process. It's not part of the hospital site plan. It's a county spot, that land. So that can be delayed. And at the tour, someone said that we could do that. Part of the thing about the path, and I've talked to some bikers, is that it really only works if there's a loop road. Well, everyone hates the loop road as well. The loop road on the Curlin Springs Road creates grave dangers for pedestrians, but you have to know all the kids are bused from Kenmore and all the elementary schools because the road's already so dangerous. So that's where we are. And that was 4 minutes. All right. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
With that, I would turn the meeting over to our chair, Mr. Maradovich.
Yeah, thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge one thing. Tonight is Commissioner Mendelson's last meeting with us. That's correct, right? You're not coming back after this. Yeah. And, I think we all like each other up here and, but Commissioner Mendelson has a special place in my heart because he is so young and so engaged and so knowledgeable, and you've been a real value add, providing a different perspective than we've gotten in these commissions previously. And that is the perspective on someone who is a young adult, a high school student going through Arlington, moving through Arlington, and the knowledge you have of so many things, but especially the bus network has been really beneficial to this commission. So it's kind of bittersweet in that your time is ending here, but you're moving on to other great things, a great engineering program. So I hope that you had a valuable time here, and we look forward to having more people like you on this commission. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'll say real quick that my time here has been really valuable. I'm really happy to be able to contribute to my county based on my lived experience, and the opportunity to serve on a body like this has been a priceless learning experience for me that I'm sure I will carry for years to come. So definitely bittersweet, but I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to help, and hopefully, enjoy the good last meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we can move on to the first agenda item, which is the capital improvement plan.
Well, thank you very much for having me here this evening. My name is Sarah Crawford. I'm the Assistant Director of Transportation within the Department of Environmental Services, and I'll be providing a condensed presentation on the FY27 to FY36 capital improvement plan. I say condensed because we're just in the drafting process. Our work session with the county board is on June 9th, so some of the material is still coming together for a comprehensive presentation. I would encourage you to check out the June 9th work session. I'll go into a lot of detail on the projects and programs, slightly less detail on the financials for this, but we'll have more detail on June 9th for that. So let me share my screen. I should have started out doing that. Okay, excellent. There we go. So one of the things we wanted to highlight at the beginning of the presentation is that we tried to work within challenged fiscal times to develop and continue a capital program that advances the county goals. We have our newly adapted vision and goals for our multimodal transportation plan, and we really use that to try to prioritize how we're making investments. Now, because we're in a constrained environment, this CIP mostly continues projects that were already developed without adding many new projects at all. I'll get into that more later as we move throughout the presentation, but we did try to stay conscious to not only our goals within transportation, but a lot of the other goals across the county that you see on the bottom of the screen. Sorry. There we go. So I wanted to delve into a little bit more of some of those highlights. We do have our major projects and programs continuing in our major corridors and business areas. Crystal City, Pentagon City transformation is underway. If you have been in that area, we apologize for the construction, but we are wrapping up some projects soon, although we will be beginning other projects over the 10-year timeframe. The core of Roslyn projects will be under development. I'll get more into that later as we move through the presentation. We will be finishing and beginning studies along Langston Boulevard, and our CIP does include numerous connections for bicycles throughout the county. We have a number of different transit investments, capital investments like the Crystal City second entrance and the Transitway extension, which are both under construction, and then Ballston West entrance, which is moving through a procurement process at this time. Vision Zero is its own program in the Street Safety Improvements Program, but it is embedded through all of the projects within the CIP as well. Our PAYGO and bond requests, GO bond, are limited to state of good repair for paving, bridges, etc. We don't use that funding for new capital projects. It's for tactical projects, pilot projects, or state of good repair. We do have funding for multimodal studies in this plan. We do not have any funding identified for implementation of those studies. We simply do not have the resources. We anticipate making external funding requests, which make the studies all that more important because the data and the information we gain from the studies will allow us to be more competitive in the external applications. However, we just don't have the local funding to assign to new projects identified. And that kind of ends with the final point that revenue challenges. We heard a lot about that through the budget process. It is also apparent in our CIP process. I'll get into the funding sources in a minute, but our dedicated transportation funding sources have lost over $100 million since the last CIP. We've been able to continue most of the projects and programs due to a shift towards external funding. We're still committed to the projects. We're just reliant on success on external grants in order to continue them. I'll provide more detail on what that applies to as we move through the presentation. And the final takeaway on this, which really probably should have been the lead, was that we are able to bond the dedicated transportation sources, both the commercial and industrial tax and the MPTA local sources of revenue. Provisions in the state code allow us to bond those funds. We've never done that before. The CIP contemplates that because otherwise we would have had to cancel dozens of projects. So funding is the biggest change since the last CIP was adopted. As I mentioned before, we do not have local funding for placeholder projects into the future. While that is a result of the fact that we are in a constrained funding environment, we have also experienced increased costs due to inflation and other factors in the economy. That's not only just inflation year over year, but inflation beyond the general inflation index. We did, based on the pilot of the 4 battery electric buses, BEBs, that we have in our inventory, determine that we are able to replace our CNG buses at a 1-to-1 ratio, which is excellent news in a funding environment that is constrained. We do not need to buy more buses than we're trying to replace. This also means that we're able to house the entire ART fleet on the land that we have now. We don't need to purchase extra land in this CIP in order to advance the service expansion and bus needs that we anticipate over the next 10 years. One of the things we were able to do with the CIP and the funding levels we have is continue funding for programs for street safety improvements, which is the sort of capital hub for our Vision Zero program, for neighborhood complete streets, for our signals program, and for other bicycle and pedestrian spot improvement programs that we have relied upon to make smaller improvements throughout the community. We have also included capital funds for art service expansion in the future. For the past 8 to 10 years, that's been the source of funds if we add new service. Those are funded by the capital program. We have made incremental reductions to paving due to a higher pavement condition index than we have really ever had in the history of the county, and also tactical implementation of paving strategies called cracked sealant, which you may see out there on certain roads. It kind of looks like spider webs. It creates a pavement surface that lasts longer, and frankly, we get more use out of it without having to pay more money more frequently to repave the roads. This is just a snapshot at the entirety of our CIP. In total, it funds $1.2 billion worth of projects. I did want to highlight the line item, the total submitted CIP at $1.5 billion. There are $1.5 billion worth of projects within the CIP, but one of the things we've done over the past several CIPs is included an implementation adjustment, which while our staff have developed the best cost estimates and schedules that we can with the information we know now, we know certain things are going to have us hit roadblocks along the way. Projects in construction may hit snags with utilities that will delay them. Projects in design may be delayed for a variety of reasons. We don't always hit that mark of, say, for instance, in fiscal 27, $180 million worth of spend. So we artificially adjust the CIP with that intent in order to keep more projects moving through the pipeline and not hold money in reserve that is to be unspent. We're trying to get more projects out the door and have the most efficient use of funding possible. So a little bit of a snapshot of our funding by program. You can see most of the funding goes to complete streets with transit next, and then we have capital maintenance, operations, and program administration. And then look at the funding by source. I won't go into great detail there, but you see new to the CIP are the bonds that we introduced to keep our projects and programs moving forward. The funding sources slide is a little bit complex, but I wanted to highlight, or it's not complex, it's just detailed. The local funds at the top of the screen, TCF and TCF C&I tax and TCF MVTA local both comprise the Transportation Capital Fund. Those are two sources that are outlined in the state code that have eligibility requirements for how we use those funds, and it must be directed to transportation purposes. TIF is an overlay of the tax district in Pentagon City, Crystal City, and Potomac Yard that takes an increment of the general fund and puts it towards the TIF. The remainder of the funds on the screen are external competitive sources. Most of the federal sources are administered by the state, which is why I grouped it in that category. These are all competitive and they're all becoming increasingly popular as other jurisdictions face the same revenue complications we have. And we also have to demonstrate more and more, with more and more detail, the benefits our projects will have on the traveling public in Northern Virginia and across the state in order to be successful for these sources, hence the importance of the studies. This is a map that highlights the CIP interactive database that is online. The link will work in a PDF version, which I'll send to Ms. Obukoya after the meeting, but you can go in and get a little bit more detail on projects throughout the county. Wanted to highlight some recent project accomplishments. We are under construction on Arlington Ridge Bridge. Again, it's kind of a difficult traveling situation down there, but hopefully we'll be complete within the next year and a half or so. We did complete Columbia Pike, which has been a long-standing challenge for people who are moving along Columbia Pike by all modes. I hope people are realizing the benefits of both faster transit service and more mobility for pedestrians and bicyclists along our bike boulevards. We're making incremental improvements on South Carlin Springs. The phase 1 will wrap up this summer, and we'll be moving forward with phase 2 imminently. And we have the Transitway extension, which will be wrapping up this summer in Pentagon City. This slide highlights all of the ways that we try to incorporate equity into both our planning and our programming and our operations. One of the things that we're really proud of is how we've really centered equity and engagement in Arlington's transportation future, which is the update to what was the master transportation plan and what I believe will be known as the multimodal transportation plan, since all of us are so used to calling it the MTP. So now as we move into the projects portion of the presentation, I did want to highlight back to the vision that was adopted as part of the multimodal transportation plan, Arlington's transportation future. I'm not going to read it, but I did highlight in orange the words that we called out as we ensured that we kept projects funded that have already been funded, and as we look towards identifying studies where we could hopefully identify capital improvements that would be successful for our external funding sources. We do maintain funding for capital bike share and art operations within the CIP. And we ensured continuing funding for Vision Zero, neighborhood complete streets, et cetera. This greater reliance on our external funding sources is a risk. That's just the bottom line. Projects may not move forward as fast as we would like them to if we're not successful with external funding requests. However, we just don't have the local funding available to fully fund the program as we had envisioned. So now we'll move on to quick highlight of some of the projects, just being conscious of your time. This slide, the purpose here is to discuss what changed in our zero emission bus transition from the last CIP. The last CIP, we were very conservative with our replacement ratio. We did not know how the buses would perform in the winter and in our hilly terrain, but based on the albeit limited data that we were able to collect from our 4 pilot buses, we do believe that it is feasible and responsible to have a 1-to-1 replacement ratio, which does lower the number of buses that we have to purchase over the course of the CIP, and thus the cost. However, as you'll notice, buses have become more expensive. It's much more competitive in the BEB environment to procure buses, and there's a much longer lead time. So while the levers did kind of go up and down on either side, it's still a net reduction in cost, which is excellent. We will have fewer buses at the end of the CIP period. We're able to fit them all on the current land we have, which requires no land purchase. We do have to make upgrades to those, the land, both at the light maintenance facility and the art operations and maintenance facility, to ensure we have enough charging infrastructure to make the BEBs as effective in their route performance as the CNGs. Battery replacements are fluctuating. There's even a question as to whether it's needed over the course of the BEB. Can we get enough life out of them without having to replace the battery? Those are things that we're still learning and the industry is still learning. So while we feel very confident that the $68 million will carry us over the course of the 10-year CIP, I can guarantee you the number will be different in 2 years when we revisit the CIP, because we'll have even more information on our performance of our BEBs and a better understanding of how we can meet our service needs. This briefly reviews our replacement strategy and our expansion strategy. We do cost share with the state for our bus replacement, but it does require a local match, and we've programmed that in the CIP. It's the Transportation Capital Fund. We do anticipate any expansion buses will be fully external funded. We feel that they are a good candidate for the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority regional funds, although we are able to apply for buses from the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission as well. Boston West Entrance is one of the larger projects in our CIP. It does leverage an incredible amount of external sources with only about $65 million of local funds to the project. So that's roughly $115 million of state and regional funding sources. It will provide a new entrance at the west end of the Boston Metro Rail Station. Design is underway. We are in active procurement, and we hope to issue a design build contract this summer. Unfortunately, I can't speak more to that process because it's in an active procurement. We are hopeful that given the timeline we have now, the entrance will be complete in the summer of 2030. Our Crystal City Metro Rail Station is under construction. It's kind of a fun image of the work that they're doing to move into the train room on the screen. We still have roughly $40 million of spend in the CIP to complete that project, which we hope will be roughly this time next year. We do anticipate a smooth construction as we move forward, but you never know what you will uncover once you are in active construction. The same holds true for the East Falls Church bus bays, which is also in construction. It has a blend of funds, including a small amount of our Transportation Capital Fund. There could, again, be unforeseen issues arise, and we still have a number of VDOT approvals we have to achieve before construction completes. A quick summary of some of the other transit projects in our CIP. We have the Courthouse Metro Rail Station elevator expansion, which will install 2 high-speed elevators out front of this building. This is an incredibly complex project. It's almost entirely externally funded, which is great because we're relying on external sources. However, we've not had success as of yet in our applications. I believe we've made 2 so far, and we have a current one active with the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. So that will remain to be seen whether we receive funding for that. The next generation bus passenger information is a really nice little project that we think will have immense benefit to the traveling public. It's QR code based and has active data that you can get from the buses to your phone and have up to the minute, up to the second, actually, information about when your bus will arrive. It will also project to the screens that are at many of our transit stations. Shirlington Transit Center expansion is under study now. We have $11.6 million of external funds to add capacity to the transit center so that we can add more bus transfers, both from the Alexandria lines that are increasing, but also so that we can accommodate more travel throughout the county as well. And finally, our Transit ITS and Signal Priority program provides technology enhancements to ensuring that our buses are operating as effectively and as efficiently as possible. It's challenging given the right-of-way constraints in the county, but we hope that with advancing technology and with our advancing signal technology, we'll be able to make improvements. Shifting to the Complete Streets program now, and these are in alphabetical order, so no hierarchy here. The Arlington Memorial Trail is a project that we've had on the books for quite a while. We are entering into the NEPA phase with some local funding and with a great partner at Arlington National Cemetery. They're invested in this project as well. However, there's constrained VDOT right-of-way, which will make it a challenge to bring this project to fruition, as well as the funding challenges as well. We've had several unsuccessful external funding requests to date. Arlington Boulevard Trail has multiple phases, most of which are funded with a mix of federal and state funds. We feel that since this project is predominantly within VDOT right-of-way, we would like to cost share with them through their competitive grant programs. One thing many folks may not know is that while we do fund capital bike share expansion through the CIP, we also fund all operations and maintenance through the CIP. This is becoming a more expensive program because of the e-bikes, which are fantastic, very high use, and are generating record ridership. They're more expensive to maintain and operate because of the dockless nature that's allowed through that amenity. It's great. We fully support it. We just need to be transparent that costs are increasing. And finally, I added the Columbia Pike Bike Boulevards to the slide just to acknowledge that while the Columbia Pike multimodal program will sunset likely in the next CIP, we are continuing work on the bike boulevards. Most of the, what you could say, low-hanging fruit has already been implemented. There are some really intensive infrastructure options that we could add, including bridges over 4 Mile Run and other challenging easement situations. We are continuing to explore those, but they will be high cost. And they are not funded in the CIP with the anticipation of future external funding requests. Crystal City Pentagon City Streets is largely intact from the last CIP because a lot of it relies on TIF. The TIF stayed fairly constant, acknowledging that there are some parks projects that are funded by the TIF. We have our 15th Street project under construction. Army Navy Drive bike lane west of Joyce is under construction. We will be issuing a design contract or issuing an RFP for a design contract later this year for the CC to DCA multimodal connection. We are currently wrapping up 30% design to understand the structural design of the bridge, and we will be looking for an innovative design approach in our next contract to complete design and then move through to construction. And finally, we're committed to improving the bicycle connectivity along Long Bridge Drive to ensure that when the VPRA, Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, completes the Long Bridge Bike Ped Bridge, we will have a seamless, safe connection down to the Crystal City Bike Network. I have 2 slides on our program improvements outside major corridors. Most of the 4 Mile Run corridor improvements will begin actually with a tactical treatment due to a repaving initiative this year, but we'll undertake a project to realize some of the elements from the 4 Mile Run Valley Plan. North Sycamore Street has been undergoing design and coordination with VDOT to enhance bicycle and pedestrian access from north from the East Falls Church Metro Rail Station. And then you can see on the slide the various studies that we have. There are some studies and other programs in the CIP for the one-offs that were in other programs. I pulled them onto this slide to try to show a comprehensive view of the studies that we have in our pipeline. We have paused on studies, but for the Langston Boulevard intersection study for areas 2 and 3, because we needed the analysis from the update to the master transportation plan to really give us that network understanding of goals and priorities, so that when we conduct the studies, we can use that guidance to overlay onto the studies. We will be beginning the Carlin Springs Road corridor study in fiscal 27. We'll actually likely be kicking off an existing conditions for both the north and south Carlin Springs later this calendar year if everything stays on track. Moving into some of the projects, again, I mentioned earlier that we're wrapping up phase 1 for South Carolina Springs, and we will be beginning phase 2. South George Mason Drive, we're in constant coordination with the National Foreign Affairs Training Center to try to work out easement negotiations so that we can implement the trail from Arlington Boulevard to Columbia Pike that will rely heavily on property from both NFATC and the Army National Guard. We're optimistic that we'll be able to achieve that, but we are then going to have to work with some major utility relocations along the way. But that will yield, as you can see on the screen, a trail, multi-use trail alongside South George Mason Drive, which is pretty uncomfortable for bicyclists in particular at this time. Continuing on, and I should say that that's fully funded with both local and federal funds, actually. The South George Mason Drive at 4 Mile Run, and then the segments 2 and 3, which is Arlington Boulevard to South Dinwiddie, had local funds on it in the previous CIP with one external funding request. This is relying completely on external funding requests, 2 of which are active with the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority at this time, and we hope to find out in the next week or so if those funding requests were successful. We're hoping to design and then construct a grade-separated crossing at the intersection of 4 Mile Run, since it's one of our high crash locations in the county and really challenging to maneuver for bicyclists and pedestrians. Finally, our Walter Reed project is under construction in coordination with the APS Career Center project, and we hope to have that wrapped up first phase this fiscal year, next phase subsequent fiscal year. Our Langston Boulevard improvements, again, I mentioned earlier, we have the intersection study that's ongoing now. We will be beginning the Area 5 study later, well, I guess this coming fiscal year, in the winter of this fiscal year, which will allow us to identify concepts to implement the recommendations from Plan Langston Boulevard from Kenmore to Veatch. We also have placeholder funds in the CIP for external funding requests to implement recommendations from the Langston Boulevard studies that we have going on now. These aren't precise. We just want to make sure that there is a volume of funding in the CIP so that we all and our funding partners externally can anticipate future requests. Until we understand the scale and the scope of the projects that will come out of both studies, we won't know the precise dollar amount. So I would anticipate next CIP that number changing greatly once we identify the specific concepts. I also did want to highlight one example of a project that VDOT is taking on within the county. We are applying on VDOT's behalf for state funding to implement recommendations that came out of the recently completed STARS study on Langston Boulevard at Lynn Street, which is again another high crash area. We have a number of other projects that we're coordinating with VDOT and for which we have secured funds for VDOT to implement improvements on their right-of-way. I just use this as one example. Our Neighborhood Complete Streets program remains funded at roughly the same levels. This is a process that's governed by the Neighborhood Complete Streets Commission and selects projects based on the location ranking. People submit locations that concern them or that have access issues, and then those are ranked and then scored and then chosen by the commission to advance as capital projects. You can see some of those on the screen here. I won't go into a lot of detail given time. Our Roslyn-Ballston program, as I mentioned towards the beginning, this will become one of our more active programs related to design and construction. We are moving forward with capital improvements at Fairfax Drive and the Kirkwood intersection. We're in design now. We had paused that related to a study that we will be bringing forward. However, given the continued safety issues there, we want to implement something now, not to preclude whatever might come out of the Fairfax Drive 10th Street study that will commence, I think it was 2028 on the previous slide. We will be turning to the core of Roslyn, which will be an incredibly complex and difficult undertaking. I can't sugarcoat that. We are removing the tunnel of Fort Myer Drive under Wilson Boulevard in order to make a much more pedestrian, bicycle-friendly environment. That will be a significant effort. We're beginning concept design this summer, and we'll have engagement later this year on that to discuss street cross sections. This will continue south on Fort Myer Drive towards the Meade Street Bridge, which VDOT will be rehabilitating in the next several years, and will come along afterwards with a capital project to expand and enhance pedestrian and bicycle access on the bridge and at the intersections adjacent to the bridge. And then finally, we will be beginning construction imminently on Wilson Boulevard at 10th Street. I wanted to highlight our street safety improvements program, our Vision Zero program. A lot of this work that you see, or many people see, are related to our studies and safety audits, and then our tactical work. This is one area where we do use a good amount of PAYGO funding, because a lot of the work performed by the Vision Zero program, both in terms of the educational campaigns, the study, the tactical implementation, and the pilot projects, those aren't eligible for our dedicated funds. So we are hoping to advance a regional project that will kind of have that umbrella of projects eligible for those funds. I think you all know and are very familiar with Vision Zero, so I won't go into a great level of detail. I will note that some of the risks related to the funding levels for Vision Zero, which are consistent from the last CIP, we've continued that program forward, are that some of our capital projects that stem out of there are increasing in cost just due to some of the issues that I mentioned earlier. We're hopeful that we can continue focusing on the quick builds and giving attention to as many locations as possible. But if we need to design more, if there's stormwater impacts or what have you, the cost of those projects will likely increase. And finally, our Walk Arlington program. The one change here is we did reduce at a small amount across the 10-year CIP, the funding for the pedestrian spot improvements projects. This program worked very closely with Vision Zero, so there was some redundancy there. We feel we still will be able to handle the concerns that come into us from the community and these kind of small spot improvements, but we did just transparently lower the funding for that. We will be continuing the Lorckham Lane sidewalk project. This was to build out a tactical project that kind of used the flexi post to wall off or kind of cordon off a section of pavement to use for sidewalks. And we also are advancing a project at Glebe and Quincy Henderson to improve pedestrian connectivity at that intersection. I did want to highlight some of our more programmatic elements of the capital program, our traffic signals program. We have 305 signalized intersections, and we are in a constant state of upgrading the signals. If you see signals hanging from wires, those are woefully out of date and in dire need of replacement, and that's what this program does. We upgrade them and improve the pedestrian access at those intersections. Our ITS program is a complement to that. It installs all of the smart infrastructure as part of our signals so that we can monitor not only the intersections, but ensuring that our timing is effective as well. And then street lights, parking meters, bridge maintenance, paving. These are elements that for the most part are in a state of good repair. We're not necessarily enhancing or adding new, we're maintaining the infrastructure that we have. And so in conclusion, we do hope this CIP continues to advance a number of the goals despite the funding constraints that we have. We recognize that we are reliant more on sources of funds that are riskier and are not immediately available to us. But in order to ensure that we can keep the program moving forward with the projects that people expect, we felt that that was the most prudent course of action rather than simply passing by projects. We will be bullish at submitting applications to external funding agencies. I think you'll hear about one later this meeting. I will note we have 13 applications in right now to the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, and we will continue to submit applications as we can to secure funding for our capital projects. But, you know, we can't ensure that we're going to be successful 100% of the time. We do understand that technology will continue to evolve, and as we're hopeful that we can stay on top of things, I think probably many of you saw the article or the note about Waymo's interest in Arlington and Arlington Now. Those are devices and modes of transportation that we are interested in, but we have to understand how they fit into our network and how our network needs to respond to accommodate some of these things that have previously not been contemplated. It's kind of like when the scooters fell out of the sky, so to speak. We had to pivot and embrace and figure out how to make it work. In some cases, we're still trying to figure out how to make that mode work. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I'm also happy to take questions as a follow-up as you have time to move through the documents online, which I'll post in the chat.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we have a lot of questions. Commissioner Forrest, I saw your hand go up first.
Thank you very much. I have a question about the Complete Streets major projects that you presented in the beginning. You mentioned with the budgetary part of the presentation that there are two cost items, one that is lower and one that is higher with buffer. Can you go into detail about how completed projects like Columbia Pike and the 12th Street Complete Streets project has influenced how we look at project planning? I know there was a lot of public concern and frustration with timelines, particularly with Columbia Pike. And I believe most of it can be not blamed, but pointed towards a lot of electrical that's been put in the 60s that we have to deal with now. How do we accommodate for that in these budgets?
We try to anticipate that in design. One of the things we do with survey and utility test pits is to try to understand to the best of our ability what's underneath the surface and obviously what's above the surface. And we factor that into the design. One of the lessons that we did learn on Columbia Pike, if you'll remember back to segments H and I, which is the west end of Columbia Pike, when we ran into, I think it was a utility bank or a water main that we had no idea was there. And you have to stop the project, restart design, redesign around that. And the lesson we learned from that, which we applied to the subsequent 4 segments, was test pit like every 5 or 10 feet, because that money spent will help avoid those issues in the future. But it also required us to have to rethink some of those designs as well. So that lesson learned, we're now applying to the projects that we're undertaking across the county.
Does this capital improvement strategy include changes and lessons learned on the communication plan to residents for that? Do we accommodate for those costs in this? I know it's getting a little in the weeds with the projects, but I think that's definitely one of the communication and timing were the key points of frustration I think every member of this commission heard over the past 2 years. I'm sure you did as well. And so would love to be able to use this to turn that page.
Absolutely. I mean, we have 2 dedicated engagement specialists and 1 dedicated communication specialist, and we all learned along the way and how to improve and how to innovate. And they're a fantastic team, and they have really embraced new thinking and new ways of engaging. So I know that we will be applying that to every subsequent project moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I know the phrase substantively complete is used for Columbia Pike. This is just my comment, but I kind of resent that phrase because drive down it and you'll still see people digging and it doesn't look complete, especially for a project. The timeline was to be completed in 2021, and now I see us going into fiscal year 28. But I know it's semantics, but
Not
Go
for
ahead.
the multimodal project.
not for the
The
multi.
bike boulevards.
Okay.
But I hear and respect, and
Yeah.
I hear your comment about substantively complete. We don't control construction. Another department or another division within our department does, and we try to maneuver as best we can to ensure that we're providing information as best we can about the projects that are moving forward for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Theo.
Yes. Ms. Crawford, good presentation. Thank you. I have two questions. The easiest one I'll do first regards South Carolina Springs. You mentioned the pedestrian improvement project as part of the plans there. I believe from our recollection, that's from 5th Street South to 5th Road Street South, and it's like the east sidewalk, at least according to the what I've reviewed before. But your slides mentioned up to 3rd Street South. Is that a separate project that I'm unfamiliar with, or
That's phase 2.
phase 2?
And that is designed. We have all of the easements, and we will be beginning that, I believe, this summer.
Okay, I don't think I saw that on the websites, but I'll double check. Second question regards the TCFs. From my understanding of TCFs, those are to be effectively revenue neutral in that, issue the bond and construct it and then receive revenue to pay off the bond based on the project itself should be generating revenue. Is my understanding correct?
No, and this is where I'm not the financial expert. We will issue bonds on TCF. I think the CIP anticipates roughly $85 million worth of bonds. It's the same as a general obligation bond where we issue the bond and then we start paying debt service the subsequent year for the life of the debt service.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Oh, actually, I do want to add real quick. I am particularly looking forward to improvements in the intersection of 10th Street and Washington Boulevard and Kirkwood and Wilson. Those I transit daily, and they are my two biggest pain points every day.
Thank you. Commissioner Lane, tell me.
I noticed you do have the Langston Boulevard study starting this coming fiscal year.
Yes.
I want to emphasize that has to go forward and not end up being delayed or pulled or put off another year or 2 or 3. We've been waiting a long time. Following up on that, though, the Langston Boulevard area plan does envision quite dramatic changes to the eastern end of Langston Boulevard.
Right.
Ideally down to 4 lanes from 2 and making a huge number of other multimodal type of improvements along that. When you had the various sources of funding, one of the things for this type of thing says that it has to increase capacity. When it says capacity, does that mean just automobiles or does it mean any type, transit, bicycles, pedestrians? So that if that gets redesigned, that we have fewer traffic lanes, but have usable sidewalks, but usable transit, usable bike lanes, that would then qualify for funding?
Yes.
Thank you. That was
What I would like to clarify, because I don't want to make it sound like, of course, it will. However, as it's rated against other projects in Arlington or in the region, it's harder to push that rating up if you're competing against a project that greatly expands capacity, whether it's transit or another project. So it will increase capacity. It will qualify for the funds. Will it score high? We have yet to find out, and the study will give us more information on that.
because it is frustrating to me that there never seems to be any place for a criterion that is safety. The biggest concern with that end of Langston Boulevard is it's extremely pedestrian unfriendly.
Yes.
And the only reason there's not as many injuries is that people just won't even attempt to cross in many cases. And that doesn't seem to be factoring into funding scoring. And that's unfortunate.
That I hope is changing, as many, particularly state agencies, are seeing the value of adding and increasing a safety factor. I agree with you.
Because that is a common complaint or observation by all the communities up and down Langston Boulevard, is they just don't feel safe around it. And they're right. It's just very unfriendly for pedestrians for the entire corridor. But given we have a number of projects in the pipeline for the eastern end of Langston Boulevard, which will be delivering 4 figures numbers of additional residents, it becomes pretty critical pretty fast, because these projects will probably come to realization before we could ever even put the first shovel in the ground for reconfiguring Langston Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Traer.
Thank you so much. I'm sure this horse has already left the barn, and I'm relatively new to the commission, so apologies for probably bringing up old conversations, but I at least wanted to touch upon the electric bus investments. I imagine there was an extensive cost-benefit analysis conducted when we embarked on that endeavor. But as you noted, the market has changed quite dramatically. It's interesting that you chose the word competitive. It's competitive on the demand side. It's not competitive on the supply side.
Correct.
There are 2 suppliers of electric buses in the country that we can purchase from, and that's part of the issue.
Yes.
So beyond it just being astronomically expensive right now, I'd be really interested to know what kind of opportunity cost was evaluated and maybe continues to be evaluated, and if there have been adjustments in the CIP since the market has changed, and whether or not we're deciding if this continues to be a good investment versus what those funds could be used for elsewhere, such as expanded service in some way. If the end goal for our climate ambitions, among other things, is to entice mode shift, electric buses don't necessarily achieve that. So I'd be really interested to know, like, if there are cost benefit analysis, if I can get my hands on that, that'd be wonderful. And if there's any intention on doing ongoing cost benefit analysis to determine whether or not this should continue to be a priority.
I don't believe we have anything ongoing. However, during the last CIP, there was extensive analysis, and I believe a dedicated work session prior to the submittal of the 2025 CIP that went over the cost benefit and the impacts from the buses to greenhouse gas emissions is, I think, what led to the directive for us to pursue only battery electric buses.
Understood. Well, I'll try to do some research in my free time to find that, but thank you.
Okay, on the impact of buses on greenhouse emissions, which is like less than 1% of the total emissions in all of Arlington County, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner Mendelson.
Thank you. To continue a little bit further on the bus conversation, I'd like to know what changed between the assumptions for the BEB to CNG replacement ratio as it went from 1.3 to 1 to now to 1 to 1. Do we have specific data? Like, I'd like to know what's guiding that change on the county's end.
Unfortunately, with the timing of the CIP, we were not able to have published our pilot analysis on the 4 BEBs that we have. However, based on the analysis that our consultant team has collected to date, I think we first started in October in terms of service. I might be wrong on that. But we have at least 6 months of data on how those buses have performed in Arlington. Our biggest concerns were the topography and how fast the hills essentially would drain the batteries, as well as winter. And luckily we had a cold winter, so we feel pretty good about the testing of those. And with the data we've collected so far, and it's not a year, so, it's not comprehensive, but we do feel that we feel comfortable with the 1-to-1 replacement ratio based on the routes that we've run, and we've tested them, I believe, on every route, but certainly our highest performing and our hilliest routes, and in the colder weather as well. That study will be published later this year. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that. But the one other question I'll ask on the BEB versus natural gas buses is, what is the current cost differential between purchasing one battery electric bus and one natural gas bus? Because I think that cost differential is the major point of concern that the commission has, and that we could be using extra funds to fund more bus service and thus take more cars off the road. So I would love to know what that is if you have it.
Off the top of my head, based on recent conversations, we don't have a quote, so this is anecdotal among staff. I mean, the 1.4 you saw in the presentation is based on current contracts. I believe it's $800,000 for a CEG or CNG. The $600,000 differential.
Okay. In that case, I'm still a little bit curious why we are doing, or why we're going on a full battery electric bus conversion, because if we could essentially fund like almost double the buses for natural gas, I'm just a little bit curious as to the county's reasoning, but yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Commissioner Vice Chair Furman.
I'll echo the sentiments that I know we discussed this at the previous CIP discussion as well. I think that the concern from all of us has been that we'd like to see more frequent service. We'd like to see more bus routes introduced. We think that that's more possible to have if we're able to purchase more buses. So just echoing that concern, I think that we stated this very clearly last go around. I get the sensation that I think people who are more focused on strictly thinking about the environmental look of the thing greatly prefer battery electric buses. I think battery electric buses are great in the absence of them being competing against other buses, right? If we think of them as they're the best option for what a bus could be, but we have a problem with everybody is driving cars, then the better method is to just get more buses to help to make the service more reliable, to make it more frequent. These are the things that would get people to consider it. As it stands right now, ART runs a service that I try to use as frequently as possible. I encourage my community and others in it to use it as much as possible, but it is hard to defend at times because it runs very much off of schedule. It does not deliver the quality of service that we need it to in order to be competitive with personal automobiles. And I worry that if we are going to just reduce the fleet size and go, on a ratio of spending the money on battery electric buses, we are never going to get to that state where the quality gets better. So just reiterating that again, I don't know that necessarily changes anything for the CIP designation. On a separate subject, because I think you've already answered the battery electric bus topic to the best that you can. On the capital bike share front, I saw there was a goal to rebalance stations to incentivize docking. Can you explain a little bit more what we mean by that and how we're seeking to incentivize that behavior more than we already are with the increased costs for users who do not dock at stations?
Sure. So if you'll picture sort of the typical bike share station, it's rather large. I'd say 15 to 20 docks. Sometimes you'll see stations that are smaller, 7 to 8 docks. What we're taking on an analysis of is, can we split those 20 dock stations, move them a block apart, or whatever the right frequency and spacing might be, to have the stations be more frequent, take up less space at any one point, so that if you just look around, there's a station kind of at your fingertips.
That makes sense. I commend moving in that direction. I've noticed that anecdotally, the newer bike share stations are smaller, that the ones that I've seen replaced in the county are cutting down the number of docks. I haven't seen the second part of what you're describing, which I'd like to see, which is then spacing out more of them so that there are more options. But that makes sense. I agree with that direction. So thank you for answering that.
Any other questions? Commissioner Theo.
Just a comment and follow up regarding the South Carolina Springs Phase 2 that you mentioned. I did find that mentioned on the project webpage. It was under one of those toggle buttons. So
Okay,
I did
great.
find it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Why is the courthouse elevator so expensive?
I am not a transit engineer. I think due to the complexity, it's construction complexity. It's literally on the building face as it moves down into the garage and on the station edge of the metro station. It's just going to be an incredibly complex undertaking.
Okay. Yeah, because it's almost the cost of what a station used to be. Like, yeah. I know that you're kind of, the job that you're given is kind of reactive. You don't have too much work for reflection or to think about the bigger picture of how to maybe cut some of these costs. Like, have you noticed, do you see any opportunities for cutting costs? Have you noticed, I know there have been studies of transportation agencies that have more in-house people and rely less on consultants, are able to get projects done more under budget. Do you see any opportunities for that?
We've talked about that related to our studies. We have a fairly small transportation planning staff, so it would space out the studies. We could do them in-house for less cost. Regarding design, much of our design is actually done in-house. We do hire out for the larger, more complex projects where you really need a special set of expertise and a multiple sets of expertise. That's a good question, though. I mean, we trust the estimates that were given. They are conservative to a degree, but for the most part, when we do our after action analyses, we come pretty close to what the cost estimate was.
I saw that operating costs are increasing basically 75% over the course of the CIP and compared to the first year and compared to the last year. Why is that the case?
A lot of that, okay, so backing up, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, ever since 2016, 2017, every new art route increment we've added is funded through TCF or has been funded. That's year over year. So we're still carrying those routes year over year. Every route we add is additional operations. Contract costs have gone up for operating services. So that was a big impact that was had on this CIP. Capital bike share need for operations also increased as well. Those are the main drivers of that. It is a lot.
Yeah, okay. But go ahead, Commissioner Traer.
Thank you so much. Just tagging on to that in regards to conversations about cost saving, I'm sure the county and the staff are doing a lot of this already, but would love to encourage a creativity around procurement. I know the county is very small, and there are some other very large players in the region, or just collaborating with other jurisdictions to go in on procurement together, not only supplies, but also contracting, since you are so reliant on contracting services where it does make sense to do that. I know that doesn't make sense everywhere, and I'm sure you're doing a lot of it, but I think just continuing to explore those options is always great.
And I kind of, once again, going back, like this CIP is in a way a form of austerity. It isn't a way of rethinking how to do things. It's how do we do what we were going to do, but with less money, and the response is what we're going to do less in the future. And I kind of, you take a look at a country that's notoriously cheap, the Netherlands, and what they've decided is that they're going to invest more upfront on bicycle infrastructure. And for us, we have like trails that might be completed in 2037. So it's kind of backwards of what should be done in a budget constrained environment. But I understand why you did it this way, but I worry, and this is more, you're responding to directives that you're given. But I worry that the county's approach needs more of a radical rethinking of what actually transit projects move the needle and what we can complete instead of, like this second Boston metro station, which isn't going to move the needle on transit that much. And every time we see it, it's a new number that's a lot bigger. And I know the plan is to have other sources of funding, but the latest county share was up to like 49 million, correct? I don't know what it is now.
It's 65 million.
Yes, yeah. So 49 million was the number I heard at the beginning of the year, and now several months later, we're at 65 million. And so like some of these, I don't see as consistent with operating in a budget constrained environment. Commissioner, Vice Chair Furman, I'm sorry, I'm a little out of it tonight.
That's okay. I want to concur with everything that the chair just said and ask the county that where possible, we look to international partners, especially outside. This problem of budget creep seems to be rampant within the English speaking world, especially. So looking at countries that are not in that ecosphere to see what are they doing, mentioning the Netherlands, anywhere where we're looking at budget constraints, rethinking those priorities. I completely agree that, even though the county's not on the hook for the full amount of it, the Boston second entrance, something that I support in theory, but at $175 million is hard to support when that funding could maybe go to establishing a multi-use trail down the entirety of the George Mason segment that we're not going to get to 2037. So yeah, thinking through where can the county really kind of get the best bang for its buck and really help to move people outside of being inside, especially single occupancy vehicles, but motor vehicles in general.
Yeah. And I know for the Boston Metro that there might be some commitments that were from the county that were given to developers and people that have invested there. But I think that the county could make a case that investment in another project might be a benefit to those people, because if we dig ourselves in a financial hole, it's not going to be of use to anybody, including the people that own the buildings there. Did I see a hand? Yes, please, Commissioner Ludlow.
Yeah, felt a lot of discussion about projects and austerity. Usually, in my exposure to capital planning and even strategic planning, you identify a full spectrum of projects. And then, of course, that's the unconstrained, right? And then you constrain it back. So I'm sure that even with these priorities, there are many other projects that are lying on the cutting room floor, essentially. Other things that we wanted to do or maybe thought about doing. Is that a correct assumption? And if I were correct, where could I maybe see those? And then part 3, I was unable to find exactly the prioritization methodology that was used to determine which projects rose to the level of making it into the CIP.
We're in a space right now where we don't really have a cut list. We completed one significant project along Columbia Pike, or substantially completed, and we are in the midst of several really large scale transit projects, some of which required the continued funding. If you had asked me last CIP, even when we had a good amount of funding, we had a cut list. We were able to continue the projects from last CIP to this CIP, again, shifting towards external sources so that you could almost say, I think it might be akin to smoke and mirrors, like, yes, we're continuing the project, but we can't do it unless we're successful on external sources. So I guess that could be viewed as a cut list, even though they're still in the CIP, we're just not locally committed to them. In terms of prioritization, I meant to mention this, and I'm sorry that I didn't. It went to projects that were in construction or in design or had gone through an engagement and have support. Projects that hadn't seen the light of day yet or hadn't seen movement through our design process were shifted towards the external sources. And of course, next CIP, when we have some study recommendations completed, we likely may have that cut list because we can rely on external sources to a degree, but even those have limitations.
And just as a follow-up, is there any kind of benefit cost analysis that's done as part of the vetting or the support garnering, or is it more based on public support than benefit cost?
It was more based on carrying over from the last CIP. Yeah.
So like a legacy.
Yeah.
You said that you will be conducting some multimodal studies, but you won't be implementing the recommendations because they're due to a lack of funds. Are you worried about, is there a risk of those multimodal studies needing to be restudied in the future? Because when it comes time to implement something?
We hope to implement the recommendations.
Yeah.
There's just no local funding to do so. So
Yeah.
that would require external funding requests. The studies give us
Okay.
enough
Yeah.
detail for that. Luckily, they don't give us enough detail that they have a shelf life so that we'd have to redo like a technical analysis. That would come as we move the project into design.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Commissioner Mendelson?
Something real quick, but as I read through the Arlington Transit Program's capital improvement plan, I noticed on goal number 16 that one of the critical milestones is a complete art network redesign that is scheduled for summer of 2027. I would love to hear about more what that is because that sounds very exciting.
I think it's an update. This is just off the top of my head, an update of the Arlington Transit Strategic Plan.
So it would mean that would it mean like something like new engagement and finding
Yes.
and like redoing the network essentially, not like just continuing off of what was
Exactly.
previously adopted 2 years ago?
Right. So I said update, but it's more comprehensive than that. It truly is re-envisioning the network.
That is amazing to hear. That is so exciting for Arlington County. I think there's a lot of opportunity to take our existing vehicle service hours and repurpose them in a more efficient way that can move more people more efficiently. So I'm super happy to hear that. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Ms. Crawford, thank you so much. I want to state that we've been banging on the battery electric buses a lot, but I don't blame you for that. I blame the county government and the county board that is engaging in what seems to be a performative transportation policy, one that has resulted in service cuts across the river, because I don't know why the optics of it look good, but any substantive analysis might have been better to hold off on that. But I think the DES team does a lot of great work and has innovated a lot over the years, especially with the more tactical improvements and trying to find how to deliver value under budget and under, within a short time period. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, on to the next agenda item, the Alexan Building on 15th Street North.
One second while I set this up. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Sergio Vitacochea with Arlington County Department of Environmental Services. I'm the principal planner in the Development Services Bureau for the Lexington Site Plan. This project is scheduled for the June County Board public hearing. The project consists of a major site plan amendment application to construct a 19-story residential building with 394 dwelling units and a 3-level parking garage, including 2 levels below grade and 1 level at grade. The application also includes a proposed vacation of a public street and utilities easement, subject to the reservation of a sidewalk and utilities easement. To quickly orient ourselves, the following aerial illustrates the site context. The site is located within the Radnor/Fort Myer Heights neighborhood and occupies the block bounded by 15th Street North to the north, North Taft Street to the east, the Telus apartment building to the south, and North Troy Street to the west. The site is currently zoned as CO Mixed Use District and designated as High Office Apartment Hotel in the GLUP. The applicant is not proposing to change either the GLUP designation or the zoning of the site. The site is currently developed with a 12-story, mostly vacant office building and an associated 4-level parking garage containing a total of 332 spaces. Vehicular access to the current site is provided from both 15th Street North and also North Taft Street. Moving on to the proposal, the applicant proposes a 19-story residential building with a 3-story parking garage. As I mentioned, 2 levels are below grade and 1 level at grade. In total, the proposal includes 394 dwelling units, including the requested bonus density earned through the site plan process. The proposal achieves an overall density of 8.22 floor area ratio, or FAR. The proposed building height is approximately 194 feet and 5 inches. As part of the proposal, the applicant is requesting several zoning modifications related to additional density, the required residential parking, among others discussed in the staff report. And lastly, the applicant is pursuing LEED Gold certification as part of the development proposal. For site access and parking, the applicant is proposing to provide garage access, loading, and trash services from North Taft Street. The loading area includes 2 loading bays and provides a 40-foot and a 20-foot deep loading berth. The project also includes the garage, as I mentioned, with 269 parking spaces, including 259 resident spaces, equating to approximately 0.65 spaces per unit, and then 10 visitor spaces. Bicycle parking is also provided with a total of 192 spaces. 184 will be Class 1 spaces located on levels L2 and L3, and 8 Class 3 visitor spaces located on North Troy Street and 15th Street North. Pedestrian access to one of the bicycle rooms will be provided from 15th Street North sidewalk. Also, the figure shows that pedestrian access will continue to be provided to the building at the corner of North Taft Street and 15th Street North. Moving to the proposed roadway conditions, along 15th Street North, the applicant is not proposing any changes to the existing street width and number of travel bike, and parking lanes. However, they will remove an existing driveway along this roadway and propose enhancements to the existing eastbound bike lane. I'll speak more of that on the next slide. The project will upgrade the streetscape to include a 10-foot wide sidewalk and 6 by 10-foot wide tree pits and an 8-inch step-off zone. These improvements do align with the RB Streetscape Corridor standards, which identify the segment of 15th Street North as having a Type A streetscape standard or treatment. For this classification, the standard calls for a sidewalk zone of 16 feet and 8 inches and street trees to be planted in tree pits. This is the other section of 15th Street North where there is a curb extension that's present today along the north side of the roadway, which does reduce the overall curb-to-curb section. And as you can see in the figure, there's no parking provided on either side. This does provide for room for the modification of the bike lane. As I mentioned, the eastbound bike lane will now be shifted to be curbside, and there'll be a minimum 3-foot striped buffer. Low-level concrete barriers are also proposed to within the buffer area to deter parking in the bike lane and provide a physical separation between cyclists and vehicles. Along North Taft Street, the applicant is not proposing any changes to the existing street width. This frontage will include a new garage entrance and a separate loading and trash service entrance, each with its own driveway apron separated by a pedestrian refuge. This is a change over today's design where there's an extended driveway along North Taft Street that serves both loading and the parking garage. The project will modify the streetscape to include an 8-foot wide sidewalk and a 6 by 10-foot tree pit and an 8-inch step-off zone. These improvements do align as well with the RB Streetscape Corridor standards, which identify North Taft Street as having a Type B streetscape treatment. And Type B for this classification calls out for a 13-foot sidewalk zone. Lastly, along North Troy Street, the applicant is not proposing any changes to the existing street width. This segment will continue to remain one-way southbound. The project will modify the streetscape, though, to include a 9-foot wide sidewalk and a 5 by 42-foot in length tree pits and an 8-inch step-off zone. Although the segment is not called out in the RB corridor standards, it does really meet the Type B treatment for classification. This application also proposes to complete a pedestrian pathway that can be accessed from North Troy Street and connects to the existing pathway that's on the southern half of the block that connects out to North Taft Street. This east-west pedestrian connection was identified in the courthouse sector plan and its 1993 addendum, both of which recommended a mid-block pedestrian linkage through this block. For vacations, here's a graphic of the portion to be vacated along North Troy Street. Approximately 5,878 square feet will be vacated, subject to the reservation of a public sidewalk easement over 4,681 square feet of the vacation area. Additional easements beyond the sidewalk and utilities easement reservation area shown above that are required for the project will be dedicated as part of the site plan process. Moving beyond the transportation elements, I'd like to highlight several other key aspects of the proposal. First, the applicant is proposing to achieve LEED Gold certification as part of the project's sustainability commitments. In addition, the applicant is proposing 9 committed affordable units or CAFs, which would allow for additional residential density pursuant to the zoning ordinance 15.5.9. Finally, the proposal includes a publicly accessible pedestrian connection from North Troy Street to the existing pedestrian connection on the Telus portion of the block, consistent with the recommendations of the courthouse sector plan and addendum. The application was accepted for review in October of last year. Following the acceptance, the project underwent the standard site plan review committee process, including online engagement, and 2 SPRC meetings, and is now on schedule for commission meetings with a county board hearing targeted for June. After today's meeting, the project will be reviewed by the Planning Commission on June 3rd, the Housing Commission on June 4th, and the County Board at the June 13th regular meeting. Overall, staff supports the proposed project because it meets, it's consistent with the goals of the MTP and the courthouse sector plan and its addendum. Therefore, staff recommend the Transportation Commission similarly support the project for reference, this slide does have the motions for the items on this project. County staff also find that the proposed vacation portions of the street, sidewalk, and utility easements related to this major site plan amendment are substantially in accord with the adopted comp plan or applicable thereof. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. And here is my contact info as well, the project website, and the principal planner from the CPHD side.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we could go into the applicant's presentation.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Viraviccia has kindly agreed to provide my slides so that I'm not caught by the lag. So I'll give him a minute to bring those up. Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Kedrick Whitmore. I'm a land use and zoning attorney with Venable LLP, and we're excited to bring you the application for 2000 15th Street North. On the next slide here, you can see the property is located in the heart of the RB corridor between Courthouse and Roslyn. Zooming in a little bit more on the next slide, you can see the proximity of the project to the Courthouse Metro Station there, to the northwest of the site. And then looking a little more closely on the next slide is the block itself. You can see that it is improved with an existing office building, the iconic right triangle building that you see there. Courthouse Plaza is located just to the west, and the Telus apartments are adjacent and to the south. On the next slide is some information about our proposal. Our proposal is to demolish this office building and replace it with a new residential building with 394 apartment units and 269 parking spaces. That's a significant reduction from the 332 that exists today, and we're very excited about that. We're also very excited about the large number of accessible bicycle spaces that will be provided. On the next slide here, as you can imagine, this area is very well served by transit, not just the metro, but there are 11 bus routes within a quarter mile of the site and a very well-connected pedestrian network. On the next slide, as part of this project and the typical review, we underwent the standard county multimodal transportation assessment. This study included 12 intersections, 11 existing and 1 future intersection. And we, in addition to the recommendations associated with signal timing, we are going to mitigate the elements of the site design with a number of TMP contributions as well as site improvements. So on the next slide is information about that TMP. This is your typical suite of transportation management plan improvements that you would see with most site plans. The next slide gives you an idea of the site improvements that will be involved. And while the local transportation network itself is not changing in any really dramatic way, we are making a large number of improvements to the area. In particular, I would note that as staff mentioned, we are reducing the number of curb cuts. We're taking curb cuts off of 15th Street, and we're consolidating parking, loading access all along the southeastern side of the building. Also on that side, we are creating a dedicated pickup drop-off area, which we think will be really helpful to operations of the building. So on the next slide, staff went through the street sections in a great level of detail, so I won't reiterate those unless folks obviously want to talk about them. So we can move through this slide as well as the next one. Great. So site circulation. as I mentioned, is not changing dramatically. It's essentially a three-sided square today, and will remain so in the proposed condition. This is the street level here. All modes of access will really use that Troy 15th and Taft Street. You can see where the various entrances are located. We've got our ped and bicycle entrances on the north side along 15th Street, as well as some secondary pedestrian entrances and the parking and loading there along Taft on the east side. So on the next slide, a little more information about that vehicular access there. Again, you see the entrances on Taft and the access to the parking. This also highlights the location of the majority of the bike spaces there on 15th Street, something we're very excited about. On the next slide, as part of this circulation, we are going to be improving the pedestrian environment dramatically. You can see on the right side of this slide the existing and proposed views of 15th Street at this corner. And you can see in the existing there on the top, there are these really large retaining walls for the garage. And that's due in part to the fact that there's a pretty dramatic grade change as you go through this site. So in the existing condition, it's necessitated these kind of big blank facades to house the garage. We've tried to make this a much more pedestrian friendly environment there in the below, making it a much more walkable area along 15th Street. And then on the next slide, a similar view, this time from the northeast corner of the site. This is where our main entrance is going to be. Again, we think a significant improvement over what is there today. So on the next slide is kind of the last element I wanted to talk about. And this was touched on somewhat in the staff presentation, and that is the pedestrian connection through the site. This is a view of the block, slightly zoomed out a little bit more so that you can see the area of the adjacent Telus property. And the Telus property today does have the ability to move through this block. And you can see that path there in the purple line. That is the existing path through the block, through the Telus site today. The problem is that this path is quite circuitous and it requires you to traverse about 460 linear feet in order to get from one side where that entrance is on Taft Street to essentially the exact location on the west side on Troy Street. So while there is theoretical access, it's not great from a practical perspective. What we're proposing to do here is provide a public easement over the area that you see in the light blue or cyan, where there can be a spur, a stub off of the existing pathway. Somebody will be able to take that, turn right, move through our site, and get to the other side of the street in a much quicker way. We cut off about 200 feet from that crossing. So we think not only is this, as mentioned by staff, something that's recommended in the sector plan, it's something that's going to really help break up the super block here and create better pedestrian connectivity through the site. And on the next slide, not only we're not looking at this area as just a method of conveyance. We've hired some great landscape architects who do lots and lots of great projects in Arlington to really beautify this space, to take it from the very concrete heavy, kind of isolated planters that exist today to create a more biophilic environment. You can see the kind of softer edges we're working with, both with the pedestrian path itself, as well as some of the improvements around that. So something we're really excited about. We think it's going to be a great amenity for the surrounding area. So with that, I'll close my presentation and we'll be available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Traer.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentation from both the developers and the staff. I appreciate your time. Speaking probably the most personally here as a resident of the Meridian across the street, I will convey that I'm very excited to see this project happening. And on a selfish level, even more excited to see that it seems that you've at least a little bit maintained that like diagonal cut through that I use walking down from courthouse to save me approximately 7 seconds on my commute home. So thanks for that. So courteous. Would have been real bummed to lose that in the development, the redevelopment. This was mostly just commenting on the, but one, singing your praises, because I'm really excited about this, but specifically about biking down 15th Street here, to give some personal experience and flavor for that site. I'd love to see all the improvements that y'all are proposing, and including that protected bike lane, at least a portion of it. For a little additional context, the bike lane essentially ends after you get past Taft Street there, and becomes a sharrow. And this is a rare time where I actually think that a sharrow, for the most part, has been fine for this area along 15th Street. Simply because, thank you for the visual, I appreciate it. Yeah, and I can see that it looks like there might be a proposal for extending the bike lane a little bit further down. You're going pretty fast downhill. As it was mentioned, the grade or the grade is pretty steep coming down here. If you're going 20 miles per hour, you're not really interested in being in a bike lane that's against cars that could door you anyway. So I'm usually literally biking in the street rather than using the bike lane that's provided there. And I also recognize, I was going to make a comment about, well, it would be ideal to make it fully protected along this block. But you know, that's not possible if you're trying to use it for any kind of deliveries. It's not really ideal. Hear you on removing the garage entrance there. Thankfully, I haven't had too many unpleasant interactions with cars on my many commutes home, but glad to see that change. I don't really have much else to opine on that. Just wanted to talk about that the level of traffic on this road already is actually not that high. And so that's why it's a rare time where actually a sharrow kind of makes sense. But if there are going to be improvements, I'm not going to complain.
Yeah. Commissioner Land, tell me.
First off, I'm thrilled with the improvement for the cut through. That really does make a difference, and that is what I think the sector plan really did originally envision, a path like that. So kudos. I think this is a real huge improvement. For the bicycles, I'm wondering about for the bike storage. Do you have provision for cargo bikes and for charging cargo bikes? Is that going to be part of the project? Because I know people who live in that neighborhood in apartments who have cargo bikes. So it is something that is coming and is in fact used.
Thanks for your question, Commissioner Lantelmi. And we've heard that more recently of the questions about the cargo bikes and chargers. At this point, we haven't designed it to that level of detail where we've kind of spaced out every single space and what will go where. But that is typically something that's in kind of the final drawing set as we get further into the design, where we will delineate the different types, cargo, charging, and whatever other kind of non-standard bike spaces might be there.
Okay, great. Because this is something that is coming, and I think it's a real amenity for your tenants if you can have something like that, and makes it a more attractive building for people to rent. So, and I assume this is a rental, not a condo.
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, again, I'd encourage you to look seriously about having those facilities in that bike room or somewhere else in the building that accommodates the tenants who have those e-bikes. Thank you.
Vice Chair Furman.
Thank you all for presenting on this. Very supportive of the project overall. I really like a lot of the changes and the decisions that have been made around the project. One question I do have is on the western half of the 15th Street North design. We've got bike lanes sandwiched between the parking lane and the travel lane before we then make them protected bike lanes later on the block. Why are we doing that, and why can't we make that the whole run of it, even just flipping the parking and the bike lane in terms of their order of where they sit on the right of way?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question, maybe like a floating Pudo.
Yeah, and I think we'll defer to staff on kind of the overall design, but we did have quite a bit of conversation at SPRC about how to use this space, right? We have this, and that's a tension you all deal with all the time, right? This limited amount of space along 15th Street. We had some folks who obviously were advocating for additional bicycle infrastructure. We had some folks who said, get rid of it. We need more Pudo here. We need more on-street parking. So certainly a balance, but I'm sure staff has other comments.
Yes, thank you for the question. So what's proposed right now on the screen would not preclude a protected bike lane or some type of enhanced facility in the future. As you can see, the applicant hasn't proposed any curb extensions that go out into 15th Street or anything like that. A lot of the travel lanes or the travel lanes on 15th Street are below 11 feet, and the width of the bike lane, as it is on the north side, is already at 5 feet. On the south side, we were able to gain a foot because of parking being 8 currently, and we can drop that down to 7. But because of those widths and also just having, I guess proposing some type of protected bike lane would require gaining or taking some width from another area. And at the moment, we do want to focus on like a corridor level of improvement rather than just like a block by block. So we saw this as an opportunity to just enhance what area we could. Because of the curb extension on the northeast side of this plan, you can see that there isn't any parking either on the north side of 15th or on the south side, but there was some room around 3 feet or a little bit more than that to kind of have something to enhance the current bike facility there, which is just a on-street bicycle lane. That's kind of what's been proposed right now. Use that footage, like that 3 feet, 4 feet, for some type of protection as the cyclists do go down 15th Street, where the grade does change and become downhill.
Can I provide a quick comment on this, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
I tried getting at this in my first statement, but again, I bike this road very frequently, and I hear the sentiments being conveyed about the road is already very narrow, and because of that, it's honestly kind of rare to have cars going incredibly fast. They get a little bit faster down to where my entrance is. So if anything, I'd love to see. There's already been some great work done into the entrance into the Meridian, but and around the curve there. But this area, you start to pick up speed and you're going, like I said, you're going so fast, you don't really want to be in a bike lane if you're going to be anywhere near cars that are going to be opening their doors, and you're going to be just cutting wide into the street anyways. It is a rare time where, just due to the level of traffic, it doesn't feel as necessary for a bike lane or a protected bike lane. However, I do think it's good to encourage the county to continue to evaluate this, because it might feel that way now, but if we're going to be adding retail and an active residential space rather than a mostly vacant office building, those kind of things could change pretty quickly. But I will say, as of right now, it doesn't feel super unsafe to be biking down that street because it feels so residential. It doesn't feel like it needs as many infrastructure improvements as you would say a heavily traffic corridor.
Yeah, I think I've raised this before, so it may just be kind of a fundamental disagreement that I have with the county's stance of because I don't think you need to provide extra space within the already existing design. I just want the order of the things flipped. I want it to be a travel lane, parking lane, a bike lane. I think what I'm picking up, and correct me if I'm wrong, the county thinks that if you put them in that order, you need to have more space between a parking space and a bike lane to ensure that if a car door was open for some temporary time or something, that the biker could get around that while not really being able to hop a curb or be stuck next to parked cars. Is that the concern, or can you help situate that for me?
Sure. So our county typical design for a PBL does have a buffer in between the bike lane that's curbside and the parking lane, and that's to account for door openings. So most of the time you'll see a 3-foot typical buffer, which we don't have in this scenario. But if in the future it's decided to remove parking on one side of 15th Street North, then it'll definitely be possible, because parking's 7 feet wide. That way we can provide buffer on either end as well.
Yeah, and I get that. I think it comes down to I'm understanding that that's the county's stance of that they want to have the 3 feet more. I just think from a safety perspective, I'd rather flip it even if there's no additional space, because again, the incident level of, as someone who bikes every day, someone opening on the passenger side of a vehicle a door into that lane versus me being parked out of a bike lane because somebody is double parked in the bike lane, that the incidence level is so much higher of someone blocking a bike lane when it is next to the travel lane. So I want to continue to advocate that the county rethink the requirement that there be a buffer between the parking zone and the parking space with a bike lane if you've got it next to a curb. I just don't think that's necessary. And I think we're doing a lot of disservice to the utility of bike lanes by continuously putting them right next to travel lanes where they're going to be blocked. Thank you.
Commissioner Mendelson.
Thank you both for the presentation. Regarding the protected bike lanes, I definitely want to echo Commissioner Furman or Vice Chair Furman's comments on the double parking issues that really hinder the effectiveness of on-street, not unprotected bike lane, just because you have to constantly dodge cars, and especially near building entrances where there will be a demand for people who are getting dropped off and picked up that will be maybe higher than average. I think that's something that we should keep in mind. The other thing I also want to point out is going off of Commissioner Chair's comments on just someone who cycles near the site. I don't go by there too much, but my general observation with going up and down streets with a steeper incline is that when you're going uphill, the speed differential is significantly higher where cars will be going much faster than drivers. And that makes taking the lane and being closer to cars a lot less comfortable as a cyclist. Whereas when you're going downhill, taking the lane feels a lot easier because you're not as worried about letting cars pass you because you're basically going the same speed as they would be anyways because you have the hill. So I would definitely encourage looking more into a protected bike lane in the uphill direction, just because I think that's where more benefit would be provided to cyclists in the area. But other than that, I'm really excited for this project. I think the pedestrian connection on the southern end of the site is really exciting for people in the neighborhood. So thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? All right, well, I think a lot of people have already remarked on the positives of this site, the removal of curb cuts, the Pudo area, the bicycle parking. I know tonight you were asked to kind of clarify what exactly that would be, and also at the SBRC. I hope that it'll be something that can accommodate these bigger e-cargo bikes. I kind of worry about, because when I look at the plan, you kind of have a ramp with a railing. It might be tough to turn into the actual room with a bigger or heavier bike. So as you all get into the finalize the design, I hope that you all will come up with something that can accommodate that, because we see more and more of these bigger and heavier cargo bikes. The parking, it's a lot of parking. I understand the reason you all are doing it is because it's at a grade. You don't want to do too much work because you want to make the project economically feasible. I'm optimistic that in the future, this parking, I expect it to be underutilized. It's mostly one-bedroom units. It's in a primary corridor. It's close to a metro station. So I hope what would happen is something like in the Bartlett in Pentagon City, and what happens in a lot of buildings in DC where the parking spaces become available to the neighborhood for commercial uses, for rental, and ideally this wouldn't be at this level, but it is what it is. Overall, I think aside from transportation, some kind of tangential related to it is getting more people here in this otherwise pretty dead-looking area next to the jail and an largely empty office building. So that's going to be nice to kind of animate that space, get us some more neighbors, build a bigger tax base, and maybe get us out of this financial difficulties that the previous presentation was about. So thank you. Unless there are any other questions or comments, I move that we bring up the relevant resolutions and get to voting. Okay. So I'm gonna, I move to vote on the first recommendation, which states to adopt the attached ordinance to amend site plan number 173 to permit construction of up to 394 dwelling units located at 2515th Street North, RPC number 17-014-005, with modifications in zoning ordinance requirements, including additional density, increased building height, reduced parking requirements, increased compact parking density exclusions, and other modifications as necessary to achieve the proposed development, subject to the conditions of the attached ordinance. Can I get a second for that?
Seconded.
Right. Get to then voting. Commissioner Forrest,
Aye.
Vice Chair Furman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker,
Aye.
Commissioner Ludlow.
Aye.
I vote aye. Commissioner Mendelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Theo,
Aye.
Commissioner Trayer.
Aye.
I think that's it. Let me know if I missed anyone, but I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah. Okay, that recommendation passed by unanimous vote. Move on to the second recommendation, which reads, that we recommend that find that the proposed ordinance to vacate an easement for public street and utilities for public street and utilities purposes on property owned by PB Companies LLC and Cedar Hills LLC, known as 2015th Street North, Arlington, Virginia, RPC number 17-014-005, with conditions, is substantially in accord with the master transportation plan.
Seconded.
All right. Commissioner Forrest,
Aye.
Vice Chair Furman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker,
Aye.
Commissioner Ludlow.
Aye.
I vote aye. Commissioner Mendelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Theo,
Aye.
Commissioner Trayer.
Aye.
That passes unanimously as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And see, we take a quick recess while the next presentation gets ready. No more than 5 minutes. So, I bring water tonight. I think we can begin with the next agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Rich Roisman from DS Transportation. This evening, I'll be presenting our proposed fiscal year 2028 VDOT Smart Scale applications. I do not have a slide deck. I would refer you to the draft staff report that was included in your packet that includes the proposed resolution as attachment A on the final page of the staff report. We are proposing to apply for 3 applications to Round 7 Smart Scale for up to $46 million in funding for those 3 projects. These applications will be put in the next iteration of the Commonwealth 6-year improvement plan, with funding most likely to be awarded no starting earlier than August 1st, 2029. Applications are due August 1st, 2026, with supporting documentation including governing body resolutions of support, due July 15th, 2026. As a reminder, Smart Scale is the Commonwealth of Virginia's largest statewide transitory discretionary funding program. There are typically hundreds of applications submitted every 2-year cycle, with hundreds of millions of dollars awarded for each cycle for projects in any ground transportation mode. There is a typo in the draft staff report in the first sentence of the discussion section. Again, the total request is $46 million, not $50 million for the 3 applications. Conveniently, Ms. Crawford touched on 2 of these applications in her presentation on the CIP. I will go through them very briefly now and then pause for any questions. First one is in the core of Roslyn, the Langston Boulevard intersection improvements at North Lynn and both the eastbound and westbound ramps from I-66. As Ms. Crawford mentioned, this is from VDOT STARS study of this section of Langston Boulevard between Beach and Lynn. There is a illustration of the concept plan in the staff report. As mentioned before, this is one of our highest crash locations in the county. What is being proposed for the northern intersection with Lynn, if you will, where the westbound I-66 off-ramp comes off and where we have the Mount Vernon Trail and Custis Trail crossing the roadway. 2 main improvements are changing the signal phase to have a protected phase for the trail crossing, and then converting the lane configuration to a double right. Again, with the protected phase, all motor vehicles will be held. There won't be turning conflicts with the trail crossing. And then to facilitate that signal change, there will be extension of the storage length on the westbound off-ramp from I-66. For the Lynn Street at eastbound I-66 on-ramp, we're installing a protected intersection to accommodate bicycle left turns, as well as reducing the northbound right turn channelization across that slip ramp. I know there are many in the community who, and we heard this during the STAR study, who would have preferred that slip ramp be removed and the turn radii reduced for that turn. However, VDOT's analysis and STARS would not permit us to do that as an option. So we're doing the best we can with a less than ideal situation, but we're shortening those crossing distances and putting in the protected intersection for bicycle lefts at that location. Second project is from a previous STAR study of the Glebe Road corridor. This is North Glebe at the I-66 westbound off-ramp. Here we are widening the existing sidewalk, as well as undergrounding the utilities along that stretch, as well as making some needed changes to the crosswalks and for all the approaches, as well as the signal timing, because this is an access point branching off of the main line of Custis Trail for people to access Ballston, one of those 2 access points, the other one further to the west coming in off of North Fairfax Drive. And then last one, also again, that Ms. Crawford mentioned during the CIP presentation, is the improvements of North Meade Street over Arlington Boulevard for the roadway and interchange improvements. Again, there are really 2 projects going on here. The first one is VDOT's project, which will come in before ours. VDOT is going to rehabilitate the actual bridge itself. Then the plan would be that we would come in afterward to do the improvements of the approach ramps. We'll be adding, upgrading the signals and the interchange geometry, along Mead, as well as improving the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure along the approach ramps, including a two-way cycle track on the west side of Fort Myer Drive that extends further into the core of Roslyn as part of the core of Roslyn recommendations out of that study. I will stop there, see if there are any questions. Again, 3 applications, total request $46 million. I will note that for the North Lead project, that is also among the 13 funding applications that we have pending before the NVTA. Unfortunately, well, the timing is such that we will have the NVTA decision probably right after the board acts on the smart scale applications. If we are fortunate enough to get funding from both sources, we will resize accordingly as necessary. But we're always trying to leverage the multiple external funding sources. Even before the fiscal pressures that we are facing now, we will probably be doing more so going forward in the future. Again, attachment A is at the end of the staff report, and I think the recommendation just to approve that resolution is on the final slide deck that Ms. Obequay has placed up on screen. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions from commissioners.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Trayer.
Thank you so much. I don't know if this is necessarily I haven't seen one of these before, so I don't know if this is the best opportunity to provide any kind of feedback on the design proposal or anything. I mean, in general, I'm excited to see any kind of improvements to this area because it continues to be a not super ideal place to bike along Lynn Street. So any kind of improvements seem like a good direction. Have some specific concerns about the slip lane that looks like it's being proposed to maintain. That I understand that might be a necessity as it's an entrance onto an interstate, and this might also be restrictions if this is a state road intersection, and that makes things difficult. But biking along there and cars being eager to get on the interstate can create some unpleasant conflicts there. But the island looks good. And specifically just wanted to draw attention that there doesn't seem to be anything on here concerning the bike lane that's on Lynn Street on the bridge over 66, which would love to see that protected sooner rather than later. And if it's an issue similar to what was being brought up by the vice chair earlier about there not being room for a buffer, I would encourage literally anything other than what's there right now, because as someone who constantly takes this route to get into Georgetown, I almost never use that bike lane because it is covered in detritus, and you also have cars again going well over 40 miles per hour, and I just get on the very wide sidewalk and try and avoid pedestrians because that feels safer than trying to bike in something I could easily slip on my bike and get hit by a car. So this doesn't really account for anything related to that, and that has some concerns. But otherwise, I think this is a pretty dramatic improvement, and that's my only comment. Thanks.
I will say that there are recommendations for the section of Lynn Street within the core of Roslyn plan. Although these applications don't address it, I would encourage you to take a look at the core of Roslyn plan and then provide feedback again if you have concerns based on what's proposed in there.
Excellent, thank you. I'll make sure to add that to my list of things to look up later. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Mendelson.
Just to add on real quick to that bike lane conversation, I know it might not necessarily be covered by the scope of this project, but something I've seen in other places in the county is, especially on bridges and overpasses, we elevate the bike lane to the sidewalk level and just stripe the green on the sidewalk. And I think that level of elevation provides the protection that would be significantly helpful without taking up more space. And the question I guess I'll just ask you is, what part of what project within our county would be the avenue to get that done if it's not this?
You talking about on Lynn specifically, or on the Mead Street Bridge over Route 50?
On Lynn Street over I-66, specifically the bridge.
Yeah, again, I would refer back to the core of Roslyn study and look at the recommendations for the typical section for Lynn within the entirety of the core. And use that as your jumping off point for what's currently recommended, and then pivot off of that for changes that are recommended to the design. All of the core of Roslyn projects, as Ms. Crawford mentioned in her presentation on the CIP, are going forward over the life of the CIP. There are, I want to say, roughly a dozen separate projects that came out of that. She highlighted not only the Lynn Street improvements, but also the removal of the Fort Myer Drive tunnel. But there are specific recommendations for Lynn, for Fort Myer as part of the tunnel removal, and some of the other main streets within the core of Roslyn, all of which are within different timelines in the CIP. But as they come up, they'll be going through our typical project development process where the designs that are in the core of Roslyn plan will be brought up and then looked at in greater detail as we go through normal project development.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And overall, really supportive of these applications. I think they'll lead to some major pedestrian safety improvements that will make travel along Arlington's major corridor safer. So thank you.
Other questions, comments? What other projects were you considering nominating, and why? And how did you decide on these?
We did not consider other projects. There's no cutting room for this one. There is a higher likelihood of success when you are pivoting from a previously completed VDOT study and going into smart scale. And since with the STARS study for Langston Boulevard, there are another number of other recommendations coming out of that study, which is pending completion. However, these are the most effective in terms of crash reduction and overall safety improvements. They also happen to be among the more capital intensive and more expensive, so they are appropriate for smart scale. Most of the other ones that are going to come out of the STAR study, can be done probably through quick builds or other means without having to go through a robust application for external funding. In the case of the North Glebe one, again, we're leveraging our attempts on that one by applying for both smart scale and NVTA. The Glebe Road STAR study was about a 2-mile stretch of Glebe Road that yielded 9 separate intersection recommendations. And during smart scale round 6, we applied for all 9 of them, and we were rejected. I think there was simply too much there, both in the overall length of the STAR study. So we won't be recommending the VDOT a study corridor of longer than probably a mile or 3/4 of a mile for any future studies. And we broke this one out again because of the benefits, the cross-pollination and availability for NVTA regional on the project, and also because of some of the costs mostly associated with the utility relocation and undergrounding to widen that sidewalk. And then in the case of North Mead, we've been working with VDOT early on because we knew that the bridge was going to come up for rehabilitation. We're limited to what we can do on the bridge itself because, for an SGR bridge project, VDOT won't widen the overall width of the bridge. They simply are replacing what you have in kind, but we have a lot of work and improvements to do on the approaches, including the interchange geometry, as well as the bike and ped improvements. And so that one, while not coming out of a formal VDOT study, we've been working on it in coordination with them with the bridge work coming up. And so it's a good fit to go for smart scale.
Thank you. And regarding the slip road, do you think it would have been any different if the county had control over VDOT, over Langston Boulevard, or because it's an on-ramp, it wouldn't even matter?
I'd say it's a gray area that probably, even if we had county control, because of the access to I-66, I think we still probably would have been stuck. Either way, even if we controlled the road, we would still have to do an interchange access report to justify modifications around the on-ramps. And I think if it weren't VDOT stopping us from doing it, we probably would have gotten the same response from the Federal Highway Administration. They're the ones who have final sign-off in coordination with VDOT on an IAR.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, then I guess you don't have a slide of the resolution, right? So we got to pull it up.
I could bring it up if you'll just, I'll share my screen in just a moment.
All right, Ms. Obukoya will bring it up. Or here we go. All right, that's a lot of reading.
not certain it's necessary to read the entire resolution and simply go through the action at the beginning of the staff report, but it's at the chair's discretion.
Let me see, let's zoom out. All right, the recommendation, all right, so I move that the Transportation Commission adopts the resolution attachment A authorizing Arlington County's participation in round 7 of the Commonwealth of Virginia Smart Scale Program. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Flores,
Aye.
Vice Chair Furman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lane Telmy,
Aye.
Commissioner Locker,
Aye.
Commissioner Ludlow. Aye. I vote aye. Commissioner Mendelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Theo,
Aye.
and Commissioner Traer.
Aye.
All right, that's it. Thank you, and we can move on to the next and final agenda item.
All set?
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Mirotovich, for the opportunity to provide you and everyone for an update on the county's ambitious initiative to develop its first comprehensive climate action plan. Also, thanks to the Transportation Commission representative to our Climate Action Plan Advisor Group, Commissioner Hussein, for his work as well. We greatly value his input as we move along this process of developing the Climate Action Plan. My name is Rich Dooley. I'm the Director of Climate Policy for the county. I'm in the Climate Policy Office, which is part of the County Manager's Office. This new plan will build on the foundation of our current Community Energy Plan, which is currently an element of Arlington's comprehensive plan. We will be updating and replacing that CEP with the more integrated approach and broader document to address climate change. And the Climate Action Plan, not to confuse anybody, is also called a CAP. While the Community Energy Plan has focused on climate mitigation and some resilience measures, the CAP will expand its scope to include additional sections and sectors critical to achieving a sustainable and resilient future, such as the circular economy and healthy ecosystems. Our overall project and process to develop the Climate Action Plan is synthesized by the acronym in our project logo shown at the bottom of this slide, ACT, ACT, which stands for Arlington Climate Together. That acronym highlights the fact that everyone in our community has a role to play to address the impacts of climate change. We're providing this project information item to multiple county advisory groups to let you and others know that the project is underway. During the course of this presentation, I'll cover the process and overall project timeline toward developing the CAP. We will highlight the engagement efforts to ensure the project deliverables are relevant to everyone in our community. And we want to hear from you. We've created a variety of different questions that I'll be talking about here shortly. And up on the dais, there should be some of these items for you to take a look at, and we'll talk about later on in the presentation. We do have an open house later today, as well as a feedback form that I'll be showcasing in the presentation itself. So our project team includes numerous people. I am here representing a large team of people that have been working on this and will continue to work on this. It includes multiple county departments as well as our consulting team with AECOM, and many thanks to everybody who's gotten us to this stage. Our core team includes Assistant County Manager for Climate Policy, Jennifer Fioretti. Also on our team, our communications and engagement expert, Rena Lara. And we also have representatives from Department of Environmental Services as well as DPR as part of our core team. And then also listed here are our consultants, primary representatives. In addition to the staff core team, we also have an interdepartmental working group comprised of staff from multiple county departments. So we're all in this together. It's important that all county departments are involved in the plan's creation as well as its implementation. Our project's advisory group representatives come from 18 different advisory and community groups and businesses in the county. Cindy Lewin is the C2E2 chair. She and I co-chair the overall CAP advisory group. Now, climate change impacts each location in the world differently. In the next few slides, we're going to highlight the main hazards that we're going to focus on with this project that are most relevant to Arlington County. So this graphic shows the red line is the primary one to focus on. From the left-hand side to the right-hand side, we're going from the 1870s to current day. The red line shows the mean average annual temperature during that time. And the upshot of this graph is that we've gone from 54 degrees back in the 1870s as our average annual temperature in the Washington, D.C. area, and we're up to 60 degrees for that average annual temperature. So temperatures are rising, and that leads to a variety of different problems. It spells trouble when it comes to managing heat stress, especially to our vulnerable populations, for children who are using our parks, our ball fields, our bus network, for instance, and our county staff and contractors who need to work outside in these increasingly hotter elements. So why does this extreme heat matter? Well, climate reports may not highlight Arlington County by name, but Northern Virginia is right in the crosshairs. You can see from this chart on this page that the number of days above 90 degrees will only increase each year over time. This slide goes on to highlight that such extreme heat causes impacts to our roads, our infrastructure, creates public health challenges, and also challenges our emergency services. So in addition to extreme heat, we have extreme rainfall issues. That extreme precipitation has occurred here in Arlington, and unfortunately, the frequency of these severe storms will only projected to increase through forecasting that has been done by people much smarter than me with climatology degrees and so forth. It's important to note here that with climate change, we've seen greater fluctuations in our rainfall patterns and in our events. So what does that mean? It means our intense rainfall events have become more extreme and damaging. But on the other end of the spectrum, August of 2025 set a new record for the driest August in DC in over 150 years, meaning drought is also something we have to be on the lookout for and have to assess and deal with. We are working on what is called a desktop vulnerability assessment, and it will be highlighting those three areas: extreme heat, the drought issues, as well as the extreme rainfall. The storm drain system in Arlington was built out many years ago, generally designed for a 10-year storm. And even without climate change, if you don't have sufficient overland relief, which we do not have in some areas, for larger storms that exceed the system capacity, properties and people are put in harm's way. Climate change just makes this dynamic, and specifically the frequency of risk, even greater. We recently developed the county's stormwater risk assessment and management plan, also known as the RAMP. It modeled where flooding is forecasted to occur if significant storms come our way, and where we need to focus our efforts when it comes to adapting to this new reality brought on to us by climate change. The Climate Action Plan is not aiming to recreate the wheel and not trying to redo the RAMP or the Master Transportation Plan or any number of other elements that are included in our comprehensive plan. Rather, it is trying to synthesize and point to those various resources and become a one-stop shop and reference tool on all the ways in which we currently address and need to expand on climate action to address the impacts of climate change. So unfortunately, there's no silver bullet when it comes to addressing climate change. It takes many activities to reduce emissions causing climate change, known as mitigation. And through the use of adaptation and resilience measures, we will work to manage the risks associated with those climate change impacts. So hopefully this wedge chart is familiar to you. It's from the current Community Energy Plan, which was last updated in 2019. It shows the many ways we've modeled how we plan to get to carbon neutrality as a community by the year 2050. Part of the Climate Action Plan project will be to revisit that modeling effort and to work with the community to establish what we all think will be our best plan moving forward. So here in the next few slides, we're going to describe the 18 to 24 month project that is the Climate Action Plan project, and to develop that plan by the year 2028 at latest. So the Climate Action Plan sets out what the county, as well as all Arlingtonians, can do together to cut polluting emissions that cause climate change while adapting and becoming more resilient for a safer and healthier future. As a gentle reminder, 97% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from activities outside of county government operations. So I'm an Arlington resident. It comes from me. It comes from all of us who live and work here in Arlington. So it's imperative that everyone in our community sees themselves as part of the final Climate Action Plan, so they can see themselves in being an active participant to help us reach our goals. So here's our high-level project timeline showing the steps toward what we aim to be an eventual county board adoption of this new Climate Action Plan. In essence, we're developing our baseline to know where we are starting from, since we know we are already underway when it comes to addressing climate change. Then we will conduct a gap analysis, working together with our consultants to see what's missing in terms of potential goals, policies, and actions. Then we'll use a tool called the C40 ASAP tool, also known as the Action Selection and Prioritization tool, and use that tool to help us prioritize our actions, recognizing that we have limited time and money, so we can't do everything all at once. Then we'll wrap all that information into a draft Climate Action Plan, goes out to you all as well as to the community for rounds of edits to make sure that we accurately portray the interests and values from county staff as well as from our community before we send the draft plan to the county board for consideration. So throughout this process, we'll be reaching out to you as well as other community members and county staff to review and comment on the draft content before we move on to the next phase. We've developed an overall project stakeholder engagement and communications plan, and suffice it to say, we plan for enhanced coordination across county departments as well as community stakeholders for a robust and comprehensive engagement effort using multiple means to reach and gather feedback from county departments, residents, and businesses. We will be running the project in phases, beginning with the visioning phase and process, which we're in now, then developing that list of goals, policies, and actions. Then we go forth and prioritize those actions, and then we wrap it up in 27 into 28 with that draft Climate Action Plan for county board consideration. For public engagement, we will use numerous in-person as well as virtual events, as well as focus groups and other engagement tools to gather comments from our community. This slide lists the various means by which we plan to engage the community. As we obtain comments, it's important that we also ensure we respond to those comments through a dynamic resource that captures the comments, questions, and concerns, and at the same time provides the Climate Action Plan team's replies to that input. That way, people will have the chance to be heard, and they can understand how their input has been considered in the creation of that final Climate Action Plan. So we held our first public event for launching the Climate Action Plan on February 25th at Central Library, called the Climate and Cuisine event, and then provided here is a synopsis of the information we want to spread to educate about the Climate Action Plan project, as well as questions we plan to ask as part of our visioning effort. So we are seeking the community input and feedback to help shape the vision and the framework for this Climate Action Plan. You can use your phone, if you so desire, to click on this QR code to access that feedback form. We also want to note that the feedback form is open until June 26th. So that'll be a total of about 6 weeks it'll be open. And we appreciate it if you could use your methods and means to go through social media and elsewhere to help us promote that the forum is open. And we definitely want to make sure that everyone in the has the opportunity to go ahead and use the forum. Takes about 10 minutes to provide replies to the questions and really let us know what's on their minds in regards to the Climate Action Plan effort and what they want to see in the eventual Climate Action Plan. So we have various phases of engagement that I've mentioned during this 18 to 24 month project. We are in phase one, the visioning process. And in addition to our monthly CAP advisory meetings that Commissioner Hussein is going to be in, we're engaging with the public through a host of activities as noted here on this slide. Lastly, our consultant to the project, AECOM, will be delivering to us this summer that desktop vulnerability assessment focusing on the 3 hazards of extreme heat, rainfall, as well as on the other side of the spectrum, drought. We will weave the results of that deliverable into our climate action plan action development process. And last but not least, I do want to once again mention that we have an open house on June 1st. It is going to be at Central Library from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. It'll be an opportunity to see the various activities that have led us up to this point, as well as the future looking out process to go ahead and to gather more input on the visioning process and have another opportunity for people to go ahead and have their voice and provide it to our core team. And so with that, that ends the formal presentation on this. I thank you very much once again for your time and attention on this. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley. Questions, comments? Commissioner Flores.
Thank you very much for this. And I appreciate all of the work that your team is putting in to this. And of course, our own commissioner, who is not here tonight, but watching his brother getting graduated. So congratulations to his brother. The question I have is, climate is inherently regional and it's affected by global happenings. What local, regional, state organizations do you plan on working with to communicate and align with action plans as you go through this process?
So let me just understand the question. Who are we coordinating with in this whole effort, or who will we be working with in the implementation phase?
It could be interpreted either way. I know that Alexandria, for example, is doing similar efforts. And I think, you know, take the Potomac River, for example, aligning on our efforts for how we do upstream and downstream climate action could be quite effective if we do it regionally.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. So I've have a 20 plus years with the county and have the opportunity to work together with groups such as the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, with 2 primary groups that focus on these sorts of matters. And a host of opportunities to work together with counterparts in all the jurisdictions in the DMV area. So I plan to continue that whole effort to do 2 things: to share the lessons learned from the work that we do, as well as to hear from them on the great work that they're doing, and oftentimes in advance of what we're up to. In addition to that, we are doing benchmarking for climate action plans around the country. To see what they have done and to take, once again, some of the best and try to apply it here in Arlington, recognizing that climate is going to be different for us as it is in Florida, as it is in Seattle, and so on and so forth. So we need to make sure that everything that we do is going to be relevant to our climate, both here and now, as well as on to the future. But I hope that answers the question, and I agree with the importance of regional cooperation and coordination.
No, I appreciate that. As you go forward, I think it's a little interesting with how the federal government is shaping out, but I professionally did a lot of significant work with regional, cross-regional demonstration projects for climate action, and encourage, I'm sure you're already doing this, but keeping an eye on the DOE resources that are out there, Department of Energy resources that are out there for demonstration specific projects. I can really see a path where the County of Arlington works well with one of those demonstration projects to make some actionable changes towards our climate future.
It's a great recommendation, and we have used DOE resources and grant money and worked together with them on the Barcroft apartments, for instance, and figuring out how to weave environmental considerations into their project. But great recommendation. I will share that with the team. Thank you.
Commissioner Traeger.
Thank you. And thank you so much for the presentation and your time. Really, I mean, this is like the crux of why I think a lot of us are here, and why I care so much about transportation in the county and at large. I want to encourage some caution as we're having these conversations and we avoid unintended consequences that we touched on earlier tonight, specifically regarding things like electric buses, which are great in theory, but in practice, as we've talked about, have resulted in some opportunity costs that we don't necessarily support at this point. Best laid plans and all of that. For instance, like I'm reading through the report on the website and seeing things related to building codes and that measure. I think it makes perfect sense for county buildings to be doing everything they can to pursue ambitious environmental design, and that's great. But as you pointed out, a lot of the emissions and other environmental impacts are not happening at the necessary like government level. And if we start implementing codes and regulations around certain building design, we could actually be discouraging the type of building that we actually desperately need to reach these goals that we care about. For instance, like if there are new well-meaning environmental standards applied to new residential that is not applied to current single-family homes, for instance, you end up just getting more single-family homes, which we obviously don't have the space up for in a small county like this. And you're just driving up the cost of development for not only something that is better for transportation and reducing car usage, but it's obvious that it's way easier to cool and heat a large apartment building or townhouses that share walls than it is for single family homes, to say nothing about what we'd be doing from transportation. So that basically summarizes all my feelings on this. I just want to encourage caution about what the county takes up in these initiatives that are well-meaning that might have negative consequences as a result.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Trier. I completely agree with everything that you said, and hope that you will express it in the public feedback opportunity. I have a question. What capacities is AECOM providing that the county did not have to complete this project or to get it going?
Well, our climate policy office consists of 3 people. And so in what was laid out in the 18 to 24 month process, I can tell you this is my 3rd go round. I was part of the inaugural community energy plan where we used a consultant for that effort, as well as part of the update for the 2019 update to the community energy plan. And so what I can tell you is that it's a bandwidth issue, number 1. And number 2, AECOM has been at this with numerous jurisdictions throughout the U.S. And so what they also bring is technical expertise that we don't necessarily have in-house with the development of these sorts of plans. And so we are leaning on them to go ahead and gather that those best practices from a variety of jurisdictions and to bring that to the table and to share it with our core team and to help us to shape this. And last but not least, they will be doing the bulk of the writing when it comes to that actual draft climate action plan. Staff obviously will be taking that in, reviewing it, modifying it, and so forth. But I'd say bandwidth is the primary one, moving in from there in order to get it done in a timely manner, which 18 to 24 months is not ambitious, but it's keeping us busy.
Yeah, thank you.
Bet.
Any other questions, comments? All right, I think that concludes all the agenda items for tonight. Thank you for your time, Mr. Dooley.
Thank you.
And I know Commissioner Wayne told me you wanted to talk about some public engagement opportunity.
Yes, just reminding everybody that the online engagement opportunity for the 4500 Langston Boulevard, that's the Kensington Elder Care site plan, is open and has been extended to Sunday night. And presumably one of us will be representing Transportation Commission at those site plan SPRCs that will be coming up. I don't think they're quite scheduled yet, but they will be coming up. So take advantage of doing that. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything you would like to highlight about that project, or anything you would like to highlight about that?
Just know, you want to know where it is. If you know where Arrow Wine is on Langston Boulevard, it is across the street from that. It's currently the Actually, it's the current offices for the Langston Boulevard Alliance. It used to be a real estate. It's next to the 7-Eleven. And across the side street from the Lebanese Taverna Market. So it's that site that is looking to be redeveloped. We are, as you probably know, we are desperately short of elder care facilities in the county. Apparently, there hasn't been a new one for 30 years that's opened. And of course, the ones that were up the hill fell through and didn't happen. So if this can go through, it would be a win for the county. So I encourage us to, take a look and give your thoughts on the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other things for the commission, reports from SPRCs or anything? Nope. Oh yes, Commissioner Theo.
Yeah, the Virginia Hospital Center, Carlin Springs, SPRC. We had our first meeting Monday. And or this past Monday, and that has a number of issues with it. Hopefully will be addressed over the next month or so, especially with the next SPRC coming up sometime in June. Big issues so far. There is an existing signaled intersection there at the site, but the current proposal has a ring road going around the proposed facility, which would then create a second unsignaled intersection. There are a lot of concerns from Jim and myself and many others, including many of the neighbors in the neighborhoods, to hopefully not have that second intersection, which would cause potentially more conflicts. There's also a proposed trail, which our public speaker, Sue Campbell, spoke on earlier, that will be addressed at the next SPRC meeting more, hopefully. But there are some conflicts on the purpose and what the purpose of the trail would be and whether it truly fits into a good site plan. And
go ahead.
Can you go into a little more clarity on the shushing reference that she had made?
Was that in reference to
the trail lighting, I believe?
Yeah, or trees.
The trees,
No, that
I
was
think,
trees. That was trees.
Yeah, so
against the building.
Well, I'm going to get some clarification on what the public speaker Sue meant by that, because my recollection on that was the trees up against the building wasn't dealing with lighting or with the trail itself. That was the security issue, was dealing with trees right up against the backside or the south side of the building, or on the interior plazas, the first floor plazas that could potentially allow or facilitate patients staying at the facility to escape the facility by climbing trees. I do not recall.
That's my recollection of what.
Yeah, I do not recall any what Sue seemed to be referring to about that being an impact or a factor in lighting or with access to the trail. So I'm going to get some clarification on that tomorrow. I am meeting with Sue and a couple of the other neighbors tomorrow afternoon. We're going to do a little walking tour of the site and of the neighborhood, and we're going to get some clarifications on their concerns.
One thing I wanted to bring up, because it's the second time it's been mentioned, is that there's concern about there being a potential for spillover parking, presumptively on 5th Road South and 6th Street South. I think in both those cases, if that is a genuine concern, I don't know how complicated it is to get the neighborhood enrolled in the residential parking permit program, but that is really kind of the resolution for that, right? Is that if there's worry about, we don't want people parking vehicles on here who aren't residents, that's the whole point of that program. And I understand their concern, but I think there's a means by which to resolve it through that program. So,
but beyond that, even one of the concerns we have is that it's overparked already.
Yeah.
Under the current plan, the county wants an additional 83 spots for its potential use of the site just north of this, where there's nothing built on it, which is already a parking lot.
Right.
So
Because the presumption is it will turn into something. Yeah.
Nobody knows what, including the county, but they want 83 parking spots on the Virginia Hospital Center site beyond what the hospital center wants.
So why do you think Glen Carl, the neighborhood?
Their concern is that people will park there because it's free and will walk through the trail, the new trail to get there. Now, my understanding is that there's not going to be paid parking.
That's what I was going to ask. Are they going to?
It's all free parking.
Parking.
So I'm not sure as a practical matter whether somebody's going to park in that neighborhood, walk all the way through the park, across an abandoned parking lot to the facility when they could park right there and there's already plenty of parking. So
if they're going to charge on-site parking, then I understand. And then I think the residential apartment parking program is the way to go to fix that concern. But yeah, if it's free parking on site, I'm not sure why anyone would choose to be further away and walk through the path.
And that's sort of where I think we've been looking at it that way. We're scratching our head a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm going to get clarification from the neighbors tomorrow on what their concern is and a little walking tour. Yeah, it's just an excessive amount of parking, considering it is 146 beds and potentially up to 300 employees, or at least 300 parking space, up to 300 parking spaces in total. I think they're looking at.
Are they going to have 300 employees at a single time there, or
no? That would be over 3 shifts.
Yeah. So.
300 spots for 300 employees over 3 shifts?
Correct. So it'd be split up. The 300 employees would be split up over multiple shifts.
Right.
Yeah.
So you'd probably only need like 200 spots at a time.
Yeah. So we will be working this out in the upcoming SPRC meeting and other feedback. I will be drafting a letter to submit to the developers and county staff prior to the next SPRC, and I'll incorporate any and all feedback I get from my fellow commissioners.
Sounds like having a big impervious surface would contradict the goals of the.
Well, the parking is currently, as proposed, split between surface parking spaces and also a garage that they are wanting to build.
Okay.
The garage, by the way, would have 2 entrances, and it's just overall seems an excessive amount of parking.
Yeah. All right.
And accommodations for parking, which
I guess we'll be hearing more about
driving. You're in the loop road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do know that there is a lot of resources for hospital, city planning, and parking transition. I can look some up, but they are on Google. It might not be a bad idea for you to go to the next meeting with those numbers. Yeah.
If you could ping me with like that, and I can look it up or anything.
Yeah, because there's a formula that you can use.
Okay. Second item, the Vision Zero team is seeking feedback on the leading pedestrian interval pilot, which that feedback closes June 1st, which I believe is Monday. That covers 2 intersections here in Arlington, the Wilson Boulevard and North Lynn Street in Roslyn, and also Washington Boulevard and 10th Street North in Lyon Park, Clarendon. The feedback form is currently open, as I said, closes June 1st, and they're looking for some feedback on the pilot program that they've been running for the past few months at those 2 intersections for pedestrian crossing.
This made me think of something. Does anybody know who in the county we contact about beg buttons? Because I would love to have a conversation about a couple of particular intersections.
I think Sarah Crawford would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll contact her.
That covers both of my items. Thank you.
Okay.
Got 2 quick events worth flagging. On Tuesday, June 2nd, next week, there is a Mid-County Transportation Infrastructure Open House event in the evening, I believe 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Alice Fleet Elementary, which is just by TJ Community Center. There are a bunch of projects that they will be answering questions about, George Mason Drive Multimodal, Arlington Boulevard Trail, Route 50 improvements, Vision Zero related improvements in that area, Columbia Pike Bike Boulevards, all that stuff is covered. So might be worth stopping by if you can. I'm not sure I can make it. And then also we have the Wilson Boulevard Streetscape project improvements are slated to begin construction late this summer or early fall, which is the area of Wilson Boulevard in the Virginia Square Clarendon area, kind of between like Kenmore and Washington Boulevard. I believe that a large portion of Wilson Boulevard is going to be closed for the project, and that will result in the need for a lot of traffic rerouting and pedestrian safety mitigation measures and stuff like that. So definitely worth paying attention to. There is a virtual open house for that on Wednesday, June 3rd. It's all online. I think it's 6 p.m. start as well. So worth paying attention to that because that is going to be impacting that area for probably over a year.
All right. Thank you. Is it related to this?
No.
Oh, well, just go anyway.
It was an update from my CPCC. I'll make it quick. We had our Q2 Crystal and Pentagon Cities Council Commission, and we had an update from the Complete Streets team specifically to talk about the completion of the 12th Street project by the Whole Foods in Pentagon City, Crystal City. And so I had made the comment to during the CIP presentation about how these projects are taking longer than expected. And it's almost always because of electricity underneath that's been found that was put in the 60s and no one ever said anything about it. And the feedback that we had at the meeting was this all happened and then the updates just stopped. And I feel like I'm seeing a trend of that where we are going through these really large projects and the county promises communication effectively and states how they're going to communicate and then falls off on it halfway through the project or after something problematic happens. And I think the public can reasonably expect pushes and delays, but we're kind of pushing our limits here as a county in what we owe to our citizens for communication wise. And so just wanted to share my biggest update transportation wise from that was just that feedback keeps coming up.
Okay, thank you. I was on the SBRC for the what would you call it? The Air Force Association. I believe you were there as well, Commissioner Lane. Tell me with the Planning Commission, and overall from a transportation perspective, and not too many issues. Most of the complaints were from neighboring HOAs about massing, sizing, and stuff like that. But it will expand Custis Trail from, I believe, 10 feet to 16 feet, and at least a small section that is that site. So that's a benefit. But it's something to keep an eye on as it'll be coming to us pretty soon, I expect. Okay. Anybody else? Nothing? All right. Well, that's it for tonight. And once again, I'd like to thank Commissioner Mendelson. I won't be calling you Commissioner anymore, but thank you. Yeah, it was just Mendelson. Yeah. Thank you for all your service. It was a real pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much. I'll say real quick that I've really appreciated how welcoming everyone has been here and helping me learn the ropes of the commission. I've never thought I would learn more about site plans, but it's been really fun. It's been a great learning experience for me and something that I think will be helpful as I continue forward. So thank you all, and I hope to be back.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to the previous chairman, Chris Slatt, for recruiting you. So yeah. I think that concludes everything tonight. Thank you.
Next meeting is July 2nd.
All right.